Sam Mendes adaptation of a Richard Yates novel. The story is, there was a lovely review by Roger Ebert, who said that effectively it is the story of the unhappy marriage that would have followed had Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio not been tragically separated at the end of Titanic, because this is what becomes of marriages that are built purely on romance and nothing else. They're a couple in the 1950s. He does some office job that's fairly pointless. She's tied up with domesticity and suffering internally, and she realises that everything is falling apart. And she has a revolutionary idea on Revolutionary Road that, in fact, what they should do is pack it all in and up stumps to Paris, to Gay Paris, which is where he always thought, all the most exciting things were happening. She says, look, we're completely in a rut here. Let's pack it. Let's just go. I will support you. You can do the thing you really want to do. And he says, I don't know what that is. And she says, but the point is you'll discover it. You'll discover it in Paris when you're sitting there with all the cafe culture and people on bicycles and baguettes and Liam Neeson running around with a huge semi-automatic weapon. You'll discover what it is that you need. But, of course, their non-revolutionary and very reactionary neighbours are shocked.
Love me, love me, love me, say you do.
Look at us. We're just like everyone else. We've bought into the same ridiculous delusion.
Let me fly.
This idea that you have to settle down, to resign from life.
With you.
I want to feel things. Really feel them.
A man only gets a couple of chances in life. It won't be long before he's sitting around wondering how he got to be second rate.
We can't go on pretending that this is the life we wanted.
I support you, don't I? I work 10 hours a day at a job I can't stand.
You don't have to.
But I have the backbone not to run away from my responsibilities.
Who made these rules anyway? Just because you got me safely in this little trap, you think you can bully me into feeling whatever you want me to feel.
In a trap!
Yes,
You
yes.
in a trap! We can be happy here. I can make you happy here. We're gonna be okay.
I hope so. I really hope so.
I want to thank everybody. Is this really happening? Oh, my God. Gather.
Are we still in the clip?
No, yeah, well,
we've
slipping
segued
seamlessly from one to the
effortlessly.
other, okay?
I couldn't spot the joy in there.
Of course, what happens is they don't. The plan looks like it's going to happen, but then all these things start weighing down on them. So will they actually make that escape to Paris and get out of the horrible, grimy life that they're
I don't
living?
know. What's the answer?
I can't tell you that'll be the end of the thing, although I think you can pretty much fill in the dots for yourself. Now, look, here's on the plus side, okay? So directed by Sam Mendes, did American Beauty, and he's kind of back in the same territory of that sort of looking askance at uptight American suburban life.
What does that look like?
What does it look like?
If you were to look askance at Louise, for
Yeah,
example,
you go, like that. That was askance.
that looked kind of suggestive.
No. Well, he's not looking suggestively
I think
at
you
American.
just made a pass. Okay, yeah.
Well, go on, how do you do askance?
I don't know. I don't think I've ever looked askance at anything. I don't know how to look askance.
I hate it when you do this.
No,
but you're quite right to pick me up on this sort of thing. Alan Frank once wrote a review that said the film doesn't work, and his editor said, "Do you mean it doesn't go through the projector successfully?" And I said, "Don't use phrases that you don't."
Anyway, carry on.
Anyway, fine. So it looks askance, but in at American suburban life, and he's clearly on home territory in this area, which is funny because obviously he's got an outsider's eye. Performances by Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio are pretty solid. I far prefer Kate Winslet's performance in this to the performance in The Reader, and the movie itself is far more worthy of a best film nod than The Reader is, although frankly I don't think either of them are anything like as great as people are saying. Here's my problem. Here's my number of problems. I have seen all of this before. The idea that housewives in the 1950s were having a rubbish time behind the incredible, fabulous to look at exterior is really nothing new. I mean, I think we all know that. I mean, ever since Blue Velvet did the behind the picket fence and the green lawn lies hideous horror and psychological torment and all the rest of it, it's like, yeah, I know. What can you possibly say that hasn't already been said? Also, if you look at a movie like Todd Haynes' Far From Heaven, that did something far more subversive with the sort of the kind of the idea of the melodrama and the idea of looking behind what the suburban scene is meant to look like and what's actually underneath. And it did something far more radical and far more interesting and far more surprising. The other thing is that actually one of the best performances in the film is by Michael Shannon, who is Oscar nominated for a supporting actor. And Michael Shannon does a really great job with what is frankly a duff role, which is that he plays the holy fool. He's a guy who's been in an asylum who's like ahead of the wave and speaks the truth. And he gets into the suburban homes and he starts saying everything that's real. Oh, you're rubbish, he's lying to you, he's doing this house is a trap, da-da-da-da-da. But the idea of having the holy fool coming in is such a cliched one. It's such an idea about, he's mad, but guess what? They see the truth. It's like, can you not come up with a better device than that? I mean, I understand it's in the sort of the DNA of the story. So in the end, although I think the performances are solid, cinematography is nice, it's all executed with a certain degree of flair, and there's one lovely sequence in it in which Kate Winslet is dancing with her next door neighbour and everything's starting to fall apart and it goes a bit crazy and you get a kind of sense of fluid cinema about it. It's awfully like, yeah, I know, but, in an age in which Mad Men is doing all this stuff, but with jokes. I mean, the really radical thing right now would be to see a drama set in the 1950s in which housewives are having an absolutely great time. They think it's fantastic. Look at this. My husband's off at work. I haven't got anything to do at all. I'm just going to have another gin. And
smoke 20 cigarettes.
Smoke 20 cigarettes because they don't give you cancer. We haven't discovered it yet. That would actually be more edgy than now saying, behind the picket fence lurked great horror. Ever since David Lynch's camera went down into the grass of the suburban lawn and found cockroaches eating each other's heads off, everything else has been a footnote.
Dear Bert and Ernie, having been an avid cinema goer and podcast listener for many years, I've often struggled to get my wife to enjoy the cinema experience as much as I do. I was pleasantly surprised the other day when she suggested that we go and see Revolutionary Road. She was a big fan of Kate Winslet and Leo in Titanic and was no doubt expecting a similar tale of romance and drama. What a mistake. It is, don't get me wrong, a superbly powerful film featuring surprisingly good performances by both Ms. Winslet and Leo. And it did well at dealing with some difficult themes about relationships, individuality, and how life flits between hope and reality. That said, it is, and then in bold, without doubt, the worst film ever to go and see as husband and wife. It takes all the negative aspects of married life, bundles them up, amplifies them and throws them all over the audience before slam-dunking a tragic denouement that literally left us both stunned. One slight moment of light relief came when Kate and Leo's characters announced their plans to take a boat across the Atlantic, at which point my wife says, I hope there are no icebergs. Anyway, keep up the good work.
Can I just say it in a very shallow way? Everyone's meant to be watching this film thinking, oh, look how shallow and empty their lives are. Look how terrible and empty it all is. And I was sitting there going, great suits and ties. And that car is really nice. And look, it's in mint condition. So actually, I had that type of, I looked at it and I didn't see it as isn't life awful? I thought, wow, I love the design of that period. I'd like to live there. I could do with all the psychological madness and all the rest of it if I could get to drive that car.
Andy Batchelor says, Dear Frank and April, last night was subjected to Revolutionary Road. Aside from Kate Winslet's performance, the camera work and a couple of nice bits of editing.
Camera work is good.
The film is awful. DiCaprio has definitely got his acting hat on, his big acting hat. He acts right the way through the film. Unfortunately, against such a natural performance from Kate, it is horribly jarring. I'm editing as I go through because this is like a thesis. Yeah. The direction is obvious and cliched with some amazingly heavy-handed symbolism. Characters talking about their feelings of hopeless emptiness have to do, and all they have to do that in the woods. Can you see the wood for the trees? And the moral of this story, don't try to be different. Life is about doing the safe thing, the safe job, and being unhappy doing it badly, and you'll progress up the ladder. Finally, in the spirit of Who's Driving the Boat, when Kate runs into the woods following the big bust-up, she leaves in her summer frock with empty hands. Later, she returns to lean against a tree in the back garden and light up a cigarette. Where did she get the fags from? Anyway,
I'm sure that even back then, in the in the age of girdles, I'm sure there were many places that
they're hidden in a girdle, are they? I'm just having rubbish.
I think it's very possible. A multitude of things could be hidden under those. The 50s were great. The designs were. Everything was great.
Thanks, Quiff Boy. Let's take some travel. Boy, we're late for that.